Hello everybody, my name is Lazarus Mkeshe. Um, and as we saw last week, the Namibian Statistics Agency released the inflation figures for August 2020. And inflation basically is just a figure that is attached to the movement of prices over a period of time. And again, I've invited Eloise to Plessis, she's the head of research at TSU Namibia, to just give us a breakdown of the figure, the 2.4 percentage that was released by the NSA. Eloise, welcome.
Hi, Lazarus, and good day to all our viewers.
Yes, Eloise, the Statistics Agency released the figures last week, as you saw, and they're saying inflation on an annual basis it's still low at 2.4%, and just slightly increasing from July to August. And just help us really give us a breakdown of what really pushed that increase, and also on an annual basis, how does that compare?
Yes, so the overall inflation rate, as you've said, has increased or has been 2.4% in August. So that means the basket of goods that we are measuring is 2.4% more expensive than at the same time this year. Yeah. And here's just a quick rundown of the major indices and how they changed. But let's chat a bit about exactly what happened here. If we look over time, you can see how the inflation rate that we currently have is quite low. We've seen periods of much, much higher inflation. Mm-hmm. So we're still here in a very, very low range for inflation. And that is mainly due to the fact that our housing inflation is so low. Housing inflation hasn't been this low in a very, very long time. So if we look at the main drivers of the inflation rate, mostly food and beverages, up 6.8% for the year. If we look at fruit and vegetables specifically, very, very high increases in prices for fruit and vegetables. Mm-hmm. And then transport inflation also shifted out of deflationary territory. So petrol prices rose last month, which means that the transport inflation is now 1.2% year on year, where it was negative 1.2% in July. So rental and electricity prices keep that housing and utilities sub-index in deflationary territory. So in terms of your housing, if you're renting, because remember the inflation number that we have in Namibia only counts rental inflation for housing. So it doesn't take house prices into account. It's only rental inflation. Overall, we are still paying less for rent this year than we did last year, but rental inflation is only updated once a year. So we're all waiting for January when they update the rental inflation again, and we can see what has happened. Has rental prices increased now, or is it still in deflationary territory? So if we look at what we're expecting going forward, we think that overall the inflation rate will be an average of 2.4% for 2020 because of the lower oil prices and the lower grain prices, and because our domestic demand is so depressed. People really don't have extra money to spend on things to drive up prices. And so the pass-through from the poor exchange rate is very limited. So what does that mean, Eloise? What are you talking about, a pass-through? Yeah. What we're saying is that the shops, if things are more expensive, the shops kind of need to take some of that increase. They cannot pass through the entire increase to the consumers, because then people will simply just not buy the products. So there is a little bit of that as well.
Eloise, thank you for that breakdown. But I still want to put you on the spot on one thing. With the lifting of the state of emergency, we're seeing that the whole economy is somewhat quite open now, even though some of the shops have closed and all of that stuff. Do you think we should expect to see prices going up now simply because everybody is somewhat trading? I mean, we have looked in the past where certain companies have somewhat lowered their price because the customers were limited, and it was basically because customers are keeping away. So with the flocking of people coming to the stores now, do you think that might somewhat push up the prices?
We will have to see. It's interesting because lockdowns were lifted all around the world, kind of around the same time. So you have to take the supply into account as well, not only the demand side. So this is going to be what's interesting. But is it going to be that because there's more supply coming through quicker, that prices remain low? Or is it the case that what you've been saying, there's more demand, there's more people coming in to buy the goods, so the prices can go up? So it can, I'm a real economist now, talking about on the one hand and the other hand. But that's the thing, that's the supply and the demand factors that we need to consider. On average, we think that inflation will be 2.4% for the year. It was 3.7% in 2019. Because there's been lower oil prices throughout the year and lower grain prices and this demand that we've been talking about that's been so low. And the shops have been struggling to pass through any exchange rate movement to their customers. So the Namibian dollar has weakened quite a bit over the year, but that hasn't made the shops increase their prices that much. So we'll have to see what the effect there is eventually. Transport price inflation has been much lower because after the peak in October 2018 of $86 a barrel, we're now at 43. We forecast a $43 per barrel average, which is down from the 64 it was in 2019. So all of these things are going to affect the inflation rate. The outlook for South African maize and the global wheat production is positive. So at least on that front, Namibia's bread and cereal price inflation should remain under control.
Okay. I think then we'll have to wait for NSA to really give us those figures, and when they come out, so we really just evaluate. So, and I'm still going to come back to you and see how correct or how wrong you were on this one.
One thing that I did find very interesting was that alcoholic and tobacco beverage inflation actually came down in August from July. Okay. So I don't know whether that has anything to do with the black market, whether because you can buy alcohol now in the shop, the price has actually come down. But the big thing that we will have to keep a lookout for is that housing inflation number, because that price has been so subdued. Because house and rental prices have been falling for several years, even before the coronavirus crisis. And so I think we will see a strain on unemployment because we've had such a lot of sectors really struggling during the pandemic. So that unemployment might put further strain on the housing market. So I'm really waiting with bated breath for the rental inflation number in January.
All right. Eloise, thank you so much for taking out the time to explain again to our viewers on the inflation and just break down the inflation figures for August 2020. We'll again call you, like I always, when there's another important number that will come up. But just before I let you go, maybe somewhat unrelated, we saw the South African Reserve Bank kept their repo rate at 3.5% last week. What do you think is going to happen in October with the Bank of Namibia?
I don't have another cut for this year, but who knows? There's quite a few different opinions among the analysts for what's going to happen. The rates are very, very low. And we've seen just even in the money market, the rates on the treasury bills have come down significantly. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Bank of Namibia does on this. So yeah, we don't have another cut, but yeah, this might be my turn to be wrong.
Okay, let me not ask you all more questions on other than inflation. But Eloise, thank you for always taking the time, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Lazarus. Right. Great day to our viewers.
Yes. Yes, and that was Eloise du Plessis, head of research at PSG Namibia, bringing us a breakdown of the August 2020 inflation figures. Thank you for watching, and do subscribe to the Namibian YouTube channel. Cheers.